Hey, we're gonna go and get started. Hey, welcome to the May meeting of the Sandusky River Valley Beekeepers. I'm gonna call the meeting to order. Hey, our first item of business, we had the meeting minutes that was sent out for the April meeting.
You were not sent out.
I'm sorry, they were not sent out.
On the table or on.
Okay, well, we'll be sending those out with the next. All right. Hey, Kim, thanks for that. Well, I'm really on top of things. All right, we also have the treasurer's report. I'll let Tammy talk to that.
As the last day of April, the 30th, we had $6,374.02 and $25 in our savings.
Thank you. All right, I want to talk briefly about what we've got coming up here in the club. Other than tonight, mark your calendars. On May 20th, we're going to have a mic control workshop out at the barn. This is going to be just a follow-on to what we did earlier this year on mics. But we're going to talk about the equipment, using the different oxalic acid and Formic Pro, and we're actually going to do a mite wash. So if you're going to be there, you're going to be participating in the demonstration, you need to bring clothing, protective clothing. Because, you know, if you're going to be around the bees, you got to have clothing. That's just how it is. Also, just to talk about the topics that we have going on, you know, this month we have, well, I'll introduce Peggy here in just a few minutes, but next month we're going to have managing single box hives. So that's single brood box hives. But what we were thinking with this is, you know, when you have two brood boxes, it's, you know, it's pretty straightforward to manage your brood box to keep that hive from swarming and to make sure the queen's got everything that she needs. But we've got a beekeeper here in the club that manages his hives using single brood boxes. And he's going to talk to us about how he manages his brood box. And then in July, we're going to have a session on hive diseases and pests. And Tom Rathman's going to do that for us. Thank you, Tom. Also, our August meeting, that is still an open slot. I've heard from a couple of you, but we have a little time yet before we decide what to do at the August meeting. We also have the items that OSBA has on their traveling speaker program. So I'd like to make that decision here by the end of the month and get the August slot filled, and then that'll be it for the year. We'll have everything filled out. Okay, since we got together last time, I just wanted to update you on the presentations we've done for the public. You know, as you recall, our mission is to educate the public on beekeeping and matters affecting pollination and bees. But so in the last month, we did the Bellevue Scouts out at the barn, pretty large group. Where's Deb Johnson? Deb recently did the Gibsonburg Public Library, and you just did a group today. What group was it?
It was the governmental employee retirement group at Michael's downtown Toledo.
Okay.
There were about 12 of us there.
All right. Well, thank you. Thank you for doing those presentations. We also had John Schick, who did the Earth Day presentation last Saturday. Sorry. So he did Earth Day. And then as I'm looking ahead, I'm looking for a speaker for June 20th. We have the Boonville Public Library. And this is mostly children, younger children. And I'm not real good at, I speak mostly to adults. I mean, I really stink when it comes to presenting to kids. Usually they're throwing things at me and, you know, I must really bore them. But so if it sounds like something you'd be interested in, June 20th, we got the Boonville Public Library. Thursday, we've got the 4-H Club, the Country Clovers, it's coming out to the barn. That'll be a good sized group, and then on May 24th, I've got the Clyde Senior Center. I feel assured I'll see most of the people I went to school with. So I gotta go do that one, just got to it. Let me see here.
Are you doing the 4-H group?
I'm doing the 4-H group on Thursday evening at 6:30 out at the barn.
This Thursday?
Yep. I wanted to give a little commercial on something. Hold on a second. How many of you have ever bought a new smoker? Okay, here's something that they'll never tell you, and most smokers don't come with instructions. You just buy it off somebody's shelf. But there's a little metal thing in the bottom, a little metal disc in the bottom of that new smoker that you just bought. And let me tell you, if you don't get this thing set in there just right, that smoker's not going to work right. You have trouble keeping it lit? There's some little legs on this little round disc. What these legs do is it gets this disc up above the air inlet, down on the bottom of the smoker. You see that? You see those legs sticking up there? Just flip that over, and that keeps that about 1.5 inches off the bottom of that smoker, and it keeps that air inlet open. Let me tell you, if you don't put those legs down there right, you'll have trouble keeping that smoker lit. So I just wanted to pass that along for your information. It's just a commercial.
One more thing about the legs, they do another thing. If you bend them out, bend them in and bend them out, they break off real nice also.
Well, then you can come to me and buy me the smoker.
Do you sell just the little tables in there?
No, but I'm thinking about starting to do that. Okay, hey, the other thing I wanted to mention is, hey, I've been talking a lot about the long-term planning for the club. And you know, I know you've seen this in our newsletter, but I've asked the directors to put together the nominations and election committee again. And what we're doing is we're looking ahead 5 years. And we're saying who in this club wants to be an officer, a director, and we want to do some planning. You know, looking out there, because you know, this club belongs to all of us. And so there's always going to be new faces in these positions. Everybody has a piece of this club. I'm the president, but I'm really just the person up here facilitating the discussion. Really, a lot of people could do this. And so I just want to look ahead 5 years on the club and see who's interested in moving into those leadership positions. So please contact me. Doug Ritchie here. Doug, throw your hand up. Doug Ritchie is one of our directors. He's going to be collecting names, probably talking to a few people, but looking ahead, I just want to identify who those people are. It just gives the club a good direction. So, yeah.
If I could talk to the rest of the directors that are here after the meeting.
Okay. All right, Doug would like to talk to the rest of the directors after the meeting in the back. So. And okay, so this is kind of where we're at now. We have a guest speaker tonight. We have Peggy Garnes. Peggy is the president of Ohio State Beekeepers Association. And she has come to talk to us tonight about using Nucs in the apiary. Give her a big round of applause.
Yep.
Yep, I can hear you.
All right. Hi, Tom. No, you're not gonna get out of that one. Okay, there's what's up. Okay, 22. Okay, so thank you for inviting me tonight. And I think that, something like this is really important with the Nucs. cause one thing, how many people lost bees last year, last winter? Okay. How many people needed a queen last year? Or maybe you need a queen now? Or this year? Or, how many people want to replace the dead ants from last year? And so are you doing that in your own bee yard? Raise your hand. Okay, out of all the people that raised their hand, of all the people that said they lost stuff, there's only like, what, 6 of you that have stuff to replace. We should be doing more of that. And also raising more better bees. And that's an internal local thing. From my background, I've been keeping bees like way too long. The smoker that I have is like 25 years old, and the little feet are welded on it. I still have the same one. If you don't run it over with the truck, they last really well. Been keeping bees a long time. Last year, you know, every year is a little bit different with losses. Last year we put in 141 and we're up to, we lost 13 so far. So like, and several of those were bad beekeeper. The winds are just crazy. And so are the deer, but I think I have a handle on the deer now. It'll be like little sausages. But, so with that said, tonight's focus is going to be on how to be a little bit better with using the nukes. We're good. Okay, if you can't hear me.
We need a little bit more volume.
A little bit more volume. Do I know how to do that? Is that on me?
I think I just got to turn it up here.
Okay. All right, here we go with the fancy one. So as we go, okay, do I need to walk on the other side? No, not so close. Is that better now? Better, okay. So, and then just remind me if I get too close over there. We're good? Okay. So what we're gonna start with is talk about what is a nuke? A nuke is a small nucleus hive, and I brought some little examples tonight. Most of them that I run are 5-frame. You can do 4-frame. I've heard people do 3-frame, and that's ridiculous because we live too close to the lakes up here and our nights are way too cold. So nucleus hives, we call them nukes for short. You want to start when you're starting to make your nuke, is you want to start with healthy bees. You'll notice, is it got a pointer on it also?
No, it doesn't.
No, it doesn't. Okay. So couple things as we go through this. If you have questions, stop me right away because it's easier to talk about it there. But you notice my hives are all painted dark brown. You know, when we first started teaching beekeeping, everything was white. You know, that's just the beacons of trouble. You know, for kids on a Friday night, double dare, you knock that one down. If they're brown, they kind of blend in more with the environment. And plus, too, these kind of days. Can I still be close?
No.
I don't know why it's.
Okay.
Is that like?
But these kind of days, if they're painted
Oh, this
dark
one's all-
brown, you're gonna get some solar gain, which is gonna help. So when we start doing our nukes, you gotta get equipment, number one, right? You can buy them just about from any of the suppliers now. We run a lot of nukes. Mostly that's what I use for my mating when I raise queens. That's what I overwinter about 65 of them for in the spring for people that are buying them. Plus they're a really good resource for extra comb, extra bees, extra nectar, whatever kind of stuff that we're looking for. But when we start to make nukes, we want to make sure that we start with healthy bees, which in my opinion, by now, you should be pretty much mite free. I know that is not what is being taught to you. But if you overwintered stuff, you should be checking those bottom boards and making sure that you don't have anything as far as mites. Well, that's gonna be way too much hand stuff. Okay. But anyway, so you want to, usually like by February, make sure you have a handle on if you have any mites. For me, if I find any bottom boards that have mites on it, Most of my lids too also are black, flat black. I'll make an X on the top of that lid. Because if they overwintered mites, they shouldn't be in the breeding program. We should be looking to get closer to bees that kind of mitigate a lot of their mites. So that we don't have to use as much chemicals. Little side note, did you see on the feeds that there's a new chemical out now that EPA is approving? For us to use in the hives. So apparently we're already building up some other resistance now. So anyway, no mites. Obviously, if you don't have mites, you're not going to be carrying virus because that's how they get around. It's through the mites. No nosema. We don't see a whole lot of nosema now. Go ahead.
Can you ask if anybody has no mites in this room? Because, I mean, I got tons of mites and.
Oh, you want to share? We have a gentleman up front that would like to share mites. No, I'm just kidding. How many people, how many people have no mites or low mites right now? How many people don't know? That's usually what it is. Do you guys, how many people run spring bottom wood? Okay, your slide board is in now, right? Take it out tomorrow, wipe it on your pant leg, respray it with some Pam, stuff it back in. Next Monday, pull it back out and see what you got.
I got tons of mites.
Okay, this gentleman up here will probably want to share. The other thing too is nosema. We don't really see much nosema anymore. It used to be what we used, the nosema that we saw was the one that looked like bee poop all over the front of the hive. The one that we see now that's out there, you don't see anything, but the bees die in the summer. So it's kind of like a silent killer. You guys can learn to do mite squishes or bee squishes and then check it under the microscope. There's some really good reference pictures on Randy Oliver's website that you can look those up and see what nosema spores or the little protozoan kind of things actually look like. It's real simple to do. Kill your bees, count them out by 10, take 10 of them, squish them up in a baggie with like 5 mL of water. Put a couple drops underneath a slide on the microscope and you can see them. And again, go to Randy Oliver's Scientific Beekeeping. He's got really, really good slides there for that. You want clean wax. Every year, we're going to talk about this in August. You should either do shook swarms on your hives or when you start your nukes over winter, give them fresh foundation. They're going to pull out a lot of clean wax for you so that comes spring, when you want to do splits and start making nukes, you've got clean wax. And then again, too, that you want to limit your chemicals or not use chemicals. Going to the mite situation. I don't know if that's a really good thing. You want to tell everybody that you have mites. You might want to let people know where you live so that when they abscond or they leave the area or the drones wander, that's where they're coming from. So anyway, so whenever you do treat for mites, you want to test again. First test before you treat, make sure you have mites. And how I always tell people to look at it is that if you find one mite, you ought to do something. Kind of think of it as like your dog or cat. If you find one flea on your dog or cat, you wait till you find like 3 or 6. No, everything in the house goes crazy if you find one flea. Same thing with the mites. You know, because if you're finding one mite, that's what, less than 20% that you're finding that is sporadic. 80% of that under the caps. So don't wait until they all get out and they're just repopulating. So test. Treat if you have to, or do whatever mitigation that you're doing, and then test again like a week or 2 later to make sure that what you did worked. Does that make sense? Okay, because sometimes the chemicals and stuff that we're using now aren't effective. Let's talk first about nukes. You can make one, you can purchase one. 4-frame or 5-frame, I would not go less than that. I pretty much use 5-frame because I already had some, plus I'm old school, so all my hives are 10-frame. So if I have to split something, now I can make 2 nukes. If you're doing 4 frames, you've got 2 4 frames and 2 odd frames. So pick your equipment carefully. Deeps or mediums. How many people are running all mediums now? 1 person. Good. There's only 1 person. For me, I have found over time, this is just me, that the deeps work better on the brood chambers, just because the queens seem to come out calmer. They have more room to lay, a better pattern they can present. Plus I found that for new people, it's a little bit hard that when you have to keep moving all those boxes, you gotta move 2 mediums to have the same real estate as 1 deep. So that gives you an extra chance to squish bees and possibly squish your queen. So that's just something on the side to think. Next, I think it's next month when that person's coming to talk about single deeps, running those, think about that. Once that queen is set on those deep frames in that bottom box, you don't go back in there. You know, you're just loading the honey supers on top, and those are mediums. So that's easy. So that's like, that would be a really interesting. I'm not brave enough for that. All my bees go into winter with 2 deeps and a honey super. Because in my out yards, you know, there'll be 20, 30 hives out there, and one I can't get to because it's too wet and mushy. And I don't want to get stuck and be embarrassed, somebody's got to pull me out from that. So I sleep better during the winter, but I would be real nervous with a single deep box. I don't get a little bit nutty. An inner cover, and a telescoping lid, that's what these lids are here. These are telescoping as compared to a migratory. For migratory, you can butt them right up next to each other. So it makes them a little bit nicer to stack wise. If these were telescoping, they'd have to be farther apart. And we're going to talk about why we want them touching. Oops, let me get back over on the other side. So, you'll notice also for screen bottom boards, usually in the summer, I like screen bottom boards for the mating nukes or for the nukes because it gives them a little bit more ventilation. This time of year, everything's on solid bottoms, and we have an example up here that you can look at later. These hives here, they're little nukes. The older I get, the closer the things got to the ground. So if you notice, they're on the ground now. The only problem, the little piece of wood there is to keep them level. The problem with this though, is in the front part here, this is like the gravel. There's a big pond here. And at night, the raccoons and I are still having an issue. They pull all the bottles out and roll them down to the pond and roll them around. The raccoons really don't bother the bees, but they're fascinated by the glistening from the sugar syrup. So now I just tell everybody, try to feed inside if possible. Do I have a timekeeper, or what time do I get out? You get out. No, okay.
8 o'clock.
Oh, man. All right. We gotta talk fast. Okay, so when you get ready to make your nucleus hive, it's really pretty simple, especially this time of year. If your nights are in 40 and staying at 40. I don't care what the day temperature is, it doesn't matter. It's the night temperature that's going to dictate when you can make nukes. And think about it, if you're taking brood away from the parent hive and putting it in a little box, and it drops to 27 at night, what's going to happen? They're going to cluster tight to protect either that queen or queen cell or that new queen. And what's going to happen to all that brood that's on the outside of that frame? It's going to get toasted. And if there's any drones, well, now you just kill the guys off, so there's not going to be good mating going on. So it's the night temperatures. So far, I've got 3 graphs in. One they tore down when we had, like out where I'm at, I'm about 45 minutes south of Lake Erie, Cleveland area. So we had like 3 nights that were like 25, 27. They tore those cells down, but the other ones were okay. But again, the nights have to be 40 and stay there before you start doing this. You're going to take 2 frames of dark cat brood. And the reason it's dark cat food, because you want them emerging. All right, does that make sense? One frame of nectar pollen, because what you're taking is probably gonna be all nurseries. They've never been out to forage, they don't know what a flower looks like, they don't know what pollen looks like, so you've gotta give them food. Plus, you want them staying home and feeding everybody that's in that box, not becoming a forager and leaving. And, you know, compromising perhaps the brood that's left behind. 2 frames of foundation, because think about it, they need something to do when they emerge. There's nobody really to feed yet, so they have all these glands that are producing wax, they need to take advantage of it. Definitely give them 2 frames of foundation. And then here's your option, you can do a queen cell, a virgin queen, a mated queen. Does anybody in here do 48-hour cells? Okay, somebody needs to do that here. Let's have a little field day for that, so that you have some good genetics that are going around. You have 48-hour cells. You take it back and put it in a nuc box like this with no open larva. They finish the cell. It's their cell then. That queen will emerge, go out, they'll protect her. It's like a perfect scenario. A virgin queen, you have to make sure that you have drones that are walking. I know the books tell you that you can have virgin queens when there's drones in purple-eyed state. You could be grafting them. What happens when we have those 20-degree nights? Or real low 30s? Who's the first one that gets the? It's the drones. And then you've got nothing to mate with those queens. And they can't go outside of about 2 weeks, and then they're not gonna be well mated. When you're doing your sugar surface, notice it's not 1-to-1. It's 20% sugar, 80% water. Okay, and the reason I tell people that is what's nectar coming at? 20, 80, 25, 75. This mimics a nectar flow, which keeps the little mentality of this nuc box pushing forward. Okay, because you're kind of pretending it's a nice nectar flow coming in. Pollen patty, how many people had small hive beetle last year? Okay, how about on purpose? Don't raise your hand. You're only allowed to have one. A lot of times too, I think they're coming in on the pollen patty. Some of them are coming in packages, I get it. Some of them come in on commercial, guys, I get it. But again, just be really careful when you're feeding pollen caddy. If you open up your pollen caddy to put it in the box, and it's got like some little white lines on it, put it in the freezer for 3 days. All right, and then thaw it out. Just to make sure whatever is in there, making those little white lines is dead before you populate your food box with it. If you're making nucs just to increase or because you have to do splits because you have too many bees, doesn't matter what color your boxes are. If you're going to be raising queens, every once in a while, if you're having like all white boxes, throw in another color. If you're having all brown boxes, throw in another color, because the queens have to orientate and get back to their box. And I'll show you some pictures coming up on that. Okay, we talked about queens. How many people in here raise queens? Oh, you guys are killing me. There should be like a lot more of you. Okay, how many people raise queens but not on purpose? Everybody should raise it.
Yeah.
Okay. You know, swarming and stuff like that. Okay, the bees know how to do this. We just want to help them along with this. So where you want to get your next queen? You guys, I'm sure the same as us down for where I'm driving from. Next week, when I think it's next week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, we're going to be upper 70s. It's going to be swarm season all over the place. So as soon as you can, before you give them that opportunity for them to jump, get in there and pull the queen that's in there now, and you can put her in a new box right next door. She's not going back, and they're not going back. But so you don't lose anything. But anyway, you can push your overwintered hive to swarm on purpose, and then collect all the swarm cells and move the old queen over. So there you got lots of new queens. If there's a local breeder, I saw 2 hands go up, take them down at the end of the day. Or you can make your own, which again, on purpose is a whole lot easier than what people think. When I started doing this, I was told, one, I couldn't do it. First, because I was female. And the guys in here know, don't ever tell somebody that's female, you can't do something because you're a female. Because they hang up, so here we go. And then the second thing I was told is too hard. Again, we're not going to be, as a club or as an individual, you are not going to be creating queens like the commercial guys. You know, they're cranking like 60, 80 queens at a time. Now, think about last summer, did you need 60 or 80 queens? Maybe 1, 2. Doing nuke boxes, you can raise somewhere between 3 and 5 very comfortably. We're going to talk about what you need to make a mating nuke to have extra queens. That's going to be the biggest drawback, is to have enough resource bees to raise queens. But if you're only doing, 3 to 5, you need 2 frames of dark cat brood per queen cell. So if you're doing 5, you need 10 frames. If you don't have that, you call the person next to you and say, hey, I have got 3 queen cells that I don't need. You want to make a nuke? How much you want to bet? They're going to go, sure. Okay. So OTS. That's the Mel Discipline. You guys have probably had him down the top. Mel's out of Michigan. He's old school too. To raise queens that way, you need a hive tool. That's it. You're not grafting, you're not doing anything. Everybody has a hive tool? Okay, that's all the equipment that you need. You take that hive tool, I'm going to show you on a slide coming up. You're going to cut in right below the perfect line of eggs or 6-hour-old larva. Pull it down 2 rows of egg or cells. That's it. Put it back in there. Go back in 10 days. Take a little X-Acto knife, cut it out. Put it in the new hive. Does that sound hard? No. Are you doing anything other than stabbing it with your hive tool, pulling it down? That's it. The bees are doing the rest of the work. Just see what I'm saying? They're doing this automatically. Just help them along. You can graft. That takes a little bit more practice, but I'm going to show you an easy way to do that. You can scoop it or scrape it. When I teach the grafting class, then we scrape 80% of the first time grafters, their grafts paid. 80% of the time. Why are we not doing this? It's not rocket science. Again, you can also do a walk away. That's kind of like a 30 split kind of thing. What you're doing is you're taking the old queen out, moving her next door into a little nuke box, and letting the hive take off on its own. It create its own queen. The downside to that is they're going to make multiple queens. And if it's one of those queens that's a little bit on the swarmy side, you could have 15 queen cells, which is going to equate then to 15 little swarms, which your neighbors are going to hate. And then probably your spouse too, because when you run out of equipment and you have to go buy 15 more sets, doesn't go well. I'm just saying for a friend. Okay. So there's a couple ways to make your own. And if you notice too, this girl is really young. She was like 2 weeks, almost 2.5 weeks old when I took that picture. Notice she doesn't look like that real long, slender one, because she just started laying. After she's been laying about 2 weeks to 3 weeks, then they get to be that nice, long, skinny one. The reason I'm pointing this out is notice how she looks a little bit more triangular. That's why a lot of times new beekeepers don't recognize a new queen. Because you guys are conditioned to look for that long, skinny, nice looking queen. Well, they don't look like that for a while. Okay, so this time of the year, if you're going to want to do spring buildup, how many people sell nukes in the spring? One? Oh, how many guys? Okay. To get nukes in the spring, you take your overwintered stuff, and you're gonna, for me, I start feeding usually about March. I hang out dry pollen, you know, and everything is on a go. You have to be very, very careful with that. None of my hives that I'm pushing hard that are wrapped, when do you think I unwrap them? What's the key number again? At night, 40 degrees. Do you think they're unwrapped yet? No. The little one, the ones that are, I don't want to say expendable. The ones that are not like really good genetics that I'm using, that I'm going to be using for grafting or something, they're still wrapped. The other ones, they can be unwrapped. And you like those boxes from Man Lake, you can just put them on at the end of the year, or at the end of the season, you take them off, flatten them out, put them behind the barn. You get about maybe 8-9 years out of them. That's pretty good. So anyway, so you're gonna push them to your overwintered hive. And then on the swarm cells, you're gonna have to check them still about once a week. And all you're gonna do is separate those two deep boxes. You're not taking anything apart. You're not lifting that off. You're just gonna lift it a little bit. Keep it on the back side of it. Just lift it enough to look and see if they're starting to form cells. Okay, because then that's gonna be your cue how fast you're gonna have to start moving. Okay, again, we're gonna find the original queen that overwintered, keep her, because she was smart enough to set everybody up and get them through winter. She's gonna go either to a whole new hive box next to it, or put her in a new box. It's easier for them to contain heat. And you know she's right there. Like I said earlier, she will not go back to the hive, the original hive. The workforce that you move with her are gonna stay with her because that's their queen. Plus most of the time, if you're moving that dark cat brood with the nurse bees on it, you've never been out of the hive. They don't know that they can fly a foot next door and go back. And then so you're gonna put her in the bottom. And then you're gonna add a box of foundation to the original hive because they've got nothing to do. That queen's not there laying eggs anymore, right? So they have all this resource that they're bringing in, the nectar and the pollen from all the trees. They've got nothing to do with that except make wax. Does that make sense? So you're gonna get a whole lot of wax. Plus extra nectar and pollen, so when you do bigger splits, you've got resource. Not that our sugar water isn't bad, and not that our pollen head is bad, but anything from that's natural coming in is better for the bees. As good as our scientists are that develop all this stuff, they still can't figure that part out.
Quick question, I put in, because I had so many bees in the hives, I mean, they're hanging outside, inside. So I put new deep frames in, and I sprayed them with sugar water and put extra sugar water because I understand they use sugar water to make the wax. It helps making the wax,
Okay, so the statement is that, when he's stimulating the hive, that he's got a lot of bees hanging around, hiding on the outside and stuff, so we gave them a box of foundation, spritz the frames with sugar syrup, good cause, or rub some wax on it, and then he was feeding them some sugar syrup because, what it does is it mimics a nectar flow.
Okay.
And so they want to move up and expand. So yes, and yes, but you want to feed inside and above the cluster so that as the heat rises, that they have somewhere to work wax. What's the temperature? What's the magic temperature for wax? For them to be working wax and pulling comb. Yeah, well, almost 70. It's close to 70. So around the cluster, they're keeping it at about 70. The little nurse bees that are creating wax can be working. Okay. So those nights when they drop to 30, all work stops. So what do we got here? The result, you got nukes with new mated young queens, brand new comb, and you still have the queen that you had. That's backup. And again, you want to hang on to her because she was smart enough to have that whole hive set up and get through winter. Okay, the other thing is these guys are going to turn into like small factories. They're going to be producing brood like crazy because it's a perfect size cavity. Dr. Tom Seeley figured all that out up at that Arnott Forest up there in New York. that it's like about 2 liters square. So when you're running 2 bees, 5 frames, perfect size for them. So you're getting extra brood, youth comb, all these kind of pluses, plus you got a new queen in each box. Again, if you aren't going to need them, how many people now this year are gonna want to add more hives? Okay, so there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There's 7 nukes, 8, 9. There's like almost 10 people in here that, yeah, they kind of want to increase. If you're one of those people that live in the city or somewhere where you can only have X amount of hives, there's 10 people here tonight that would want these. Get them inspected. We're all supposed to be registered. That's law. It's like having your dog. Get them inspected. Wouldn't it be better to sell them to somebody that you know is going to take good care of them? I think that's always the crazy part to me. It's like, but they're going to take good care of these girls. I put so much time into them. Okay, so again, we talked a little bit about making your own queens, crafting, cell punch, which is kind of old school. Anybody in here do cell punch? That's kind of weird. You get a ferrule, solder it onto a little rod of metal, and you punch through the frame, through the wax. Now, obviously, if you're using plastic, that's not going to work unless you melt it. Which I tried doing that, and it just made a mess. Plus, you fry everybody around them. But cell punch really isn't done much. The notching is that OTS on the spot creamery, like this silicone does. And again, all you need for this is a hive tool. That you need a ferrule. That you need a grafting tool. There's a whole bunch of other ones, and it just takes practice. That's all this takes. This is trust me, not rocket science. So again, pick the hive that you are going to, that you really like that queen. One that she should be super gentle. Not one of those crazy ones when you open it up and they're banging off your veil and, hanging all over your clothes and trying to sting you and stuff like that. Not her. That's not a hive that you want to graft from because that's a genetic tendency. Let's not be passing that along. But again, pick a hive that overwintered well, built up well. The bees are gentle. They're good honey producers. Mitigated a lot of their mites without your assistance. All that kind of good stuff. So if you're going to do a heavy split this time of the year, you're going to take 3 frames. Dark cat food because we need more heat because the nights are still a little bit swirly. You're taking the hearing bees. What I do is as I'm starting, I'll line up like 2 or 3 cube boxes, and as soon as I find the one with the queen, the frame with the queen on it, put her in a quiet box to the side. That way, she's been moved and isn't going to get shook in with anybody else. One of the hiccups this time of the year till about another couple of weeks is sometimes there's a too clean thing going on in your hive. So don't let that kind of freak you out. How many people have their queens marked? Okay, we should have a class with that too. Mark everybody.
That's something I really like to see done. I got stuff to do, but I'm always afraid of a switcher. Like, no, just let it go later.
We did that last June.
Yeah, we had a workshop last June on that, but
They switched
I
to,
let my wife do it because she's much more gentle at marking the queens than I am. I'm a little nervous about it.
I thought everyone to do it, and I keep checking out.
I
And,
did too.
okay, for those of you, how many people have queen excluders at home? Probably everybody should have their little hands up to that one. 4 o'clock in the afternoon, put the queen excluder in front of the hive. That's when the guys are coming home. As soon as they hit that queen excluder, they're not really smart enough to walk around the side, so they just hang there. You sit there on your bucket, 5-gallon bucket, with your marking pen, pick them up, mark them with a color, not this year's, obviously, because that kind of really swirls things around. Pick a color. You're like, ooh, because this year is red. And just mark a whole bunch of them. Just pick them up by their thorax. Not by their wings and not by their legs. That really freaks me out. Pick them up by their thorax, put a little dot of paint on them, put them around the corner so they can walk in and get fed. And then the next day, move down one hive. Put the queen excluder up 4 o'clock, pick a different color, not red and not blue. And then at the end of the week, go back the next week and see if everybody is in their same hive. We did that at mine, we do groups of 10. And they came back the next week, everybody had a different color, we had 15 people out at the property. Everybody had a different color marking pen. And then the next Sunday, when everybody came out, we opened up like 5 hives and it was like a rainbow. It was like, okay, so this proves the guys are fickle, they go anywhere that they've got good food. So anyway, okay, we got off track here. 3 frames this time of the year because you need extra heat. When you are feeling cat brood, dark cat brood, put your hand on it. It's really warm. Those little bees inside of there really create a good bit of heat. However your work is, whether you are doing the grafting, whether you did cell punch, whether you did that OTS, whatever you did, take that frame, and that's what's gonna go between 2 frames of dark cat broods where the cell goes, and then the other frame of dark cat broods going on the south side of the hive.
Say that again?
Okay, the south side of the hive.
Not
You
that.
got 3 frames.
Okay.
So starting from the edge. You're gonna have, this is the south side. This will be your dark frame of cat brood. Dark frame of cat brood. This frame right in the center is going to be your frame that has the cell on it, or cells. You can put 2 in there, not more than that. The other frame of dark cat brood, and then the last frame is going to be nectar pollen. Because again, remember we said we're taking nurseries, they don't know anything. So on those cold nights, somebody still has food. All right, does that make sense? Okay. I only use when I'm doing small nucs. Especially in the heat of the summer, they only get a 1/4 sheet of pollen patty. I have a commercial guy that comes up and he's in my fly zone, which kind of freaks me out. He wasn't here last year, so I'm hoping he was done. But I only put a 1/4 sheet of pollen patty, just because, you know, I don't want to be feeding all my beetles. The other thing too is you're gonna add another box. If you're putting an extra box in, shake in like another couple frames of nurse bees so that they can keep everybody warm. You put your inner cover down, face down. How many people really look at their inner cover? I brought 2 different ones. Some of them, they used to come, one side was flat, the other side that had a little notch in it had a little space where you could put your pollen patty. Now they're both kind of, you got space on both sides. So make sure that you are gonna put it facing down so the notch side faces down. So that when the bees come flying back home, when they start going in, they go through that little notch and they get right to work. All right? If you have it face up, they fly back in and they have to walk 8 inches before they can get to work. And if they're carrying nectar, water, or pollen, that's a long way to go for a little bee. So kind of cut them a little bit of a break. The other thing is you put your feeder jar, 1-to-1 syrup. On these, I do use 1-to-1 syrup, and I like to add like either Honeybee Healthy or that Pro Health. The last few years, I've been using that Hydrolyte because it's got a seaweed base, so it's more acidic in their gut. And I pretty much always test for like no or very low nosema. And from what I've been told, it's because it's the acidic base. So that's 2 cents for that. I close them up for 24 hours, which means no one comes or goes. I want to make sure that everybody smells that new queen or queen cell so they know this is where mom is, this is where work stays. If it's the heat of the summer, my hives are dark brown. I'll put them between the 2 barns so they're in the shade. This time of year, everybody's in full fun. The more heat we can collect, the better. So if you're gonna go for, oh, we'll go back, hold on. So you close it up for 24 hours. Make sure it's in the shade so you don't cook them, all right? After 24 hours, you're only gonna open up the top hole. And the reason for that, if you open up the bottom one, Rocky Raccoon is out there. Two, we got Sally the skunk. In June, that's when all the kittens come out, and a mother skunk and 3 kittens can eat a full-size hide in 2 or 3 nights where it will not recover. These little Nucs wouldn't have a chance. All right, so if you open just that little top hole, and I'll show you when you guys come up to look at these, they have to get under the migratory cover. They have to come back to the box, climb up, and then they get to the hole. And it's just enough room on these migratory covers for them to squirrel in. The raccoon can't lift this. The skunks can't bother them because the skunks are always gonna be at the bottom scratching, right? So again, always use the top entrance. So again, there we go, after 24 hours, and then life goes on. Yes.
So where you put this, a screen in it?
I give it a full piece of wood.
Oh, okay.
I just completely cover it,
Oh,
and I shove it in there tight,
yeah,
because again, the skunks have some pretty sharp little fingernails.
okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay, so if you're gonna do grafting of some type that you're gonna make them make yourselves, don't go out and buy all that fancy equipment. Don't get those emery frames and all that kind of crazy stuff. Use a 5-frame meat box. Get 2 of them. And use it as your starter finisher. When you read the stuff that all the big guys are making 60 cells at a time, you know, they've got like 3 deeps and there's 100,000 bees in there and all that crazy stuff. You're not making that many. In a 5-frame meat box, 1 deep, you can gently create 10 cells if you can use that many. If not, cut it down. Again, you'll need a 5-frame meat box. This is the one that's gonna be where the cells are and the brood. This is the inner cover. Notice the hole is facing up because we don't want anybody coming in and bothering that. That's also gonna be a queen excluder on the inner cover hole. Because virgin queens, it smells better than where they're living. So they wanna go back there. And then I usually crank this when the cells go in, I crank this off, see the little piece of wood, and these are the bees that here they can still get back in. This is an empty feed box. And then a telescoping lid. The reason, I tell you to get 2, 1, because you wanna feed inside, and then after you raise your cells and you put them in the other meat boxes, you can just let 1 cell stay in that box. Give them another box of foundation, and now you got your 5/5 to go into winter. And we have talked over those. Okay, that's what your starter should look like. Lots and lots of bees. Queen cells have to be fed like 500-600 times in 12 hours. So you want lots of bees to be filling those up. And I know this isn't a biology talk, but the big thing is look how much longer it takes for drones to be sexually mature. In the books, it says that you can do it at fertilized stage. And I had this discussion with another queen breeder the other night that we were at a talk and the guy said, oh yeah, do that. But then like 2 nights in a row, it was 27, you know, all the drones got fried. So what happens to all those cells that people grafted or notched or whatever they did? For me, and I always recommend now to people, if you're gonna do any type of queen raising, whether on purpose or accidental, is make sure there are drones walking. And then once they are walking, take your finger, and as they're going across the frame, push down on their little back a little bit. If they buzz, they're sexually mature. I know that sounds really weird. I learned that at Purdue. If they don't, and they just kind of wiggle and squirrel away, they're too young. And a mature drone will buzz. Did you know that? You already knew that? Oh, okay. Yeah, I thought it was like, well, really. So that was my job when I have to go travel up there, is how to teach the undergrad students how to tell if that drone is old enough to be mating. So again, this is why it's in red too. Because even though the girls get out sooner, they have to be out and mature before we can do anything. Tom, is that a comment?
My wife broke my shoulders, I was.
Okay, see? Okay, that validates my comment. If you're going to look for, the right age larva to grab, I know these are really easy to see, but these are too old. You want this or that? Not that. Not that, not barely turning a seed. So when you go to do your notching, when you're shoving that hive tool in, you're gonna cut, and I've got another side coming up, you're gonna cut the bottom of this cell off. With your hive tool, you're coming in, cutting that off and pulling straight down. All right, you're gonna pull 2 to 3 more cells down. Let's think about it. Worker cells face which way? Up at 17 degrees, right? Which way do your queen cells go? All right, so if you just ripped out the bottom of this, the hive knows it's like, oh, we're gonna have to pull that down and make a queen out of it. They're very easily fooled sometimes.
You just put it in there and then just goes
Yeah,
down and then
that's
make
it.
your.
Yep. So I got another frame coming up and I'll show you that one. So again, you're gonna pick the one that, again, you want a really nice hive, good honey producer, no mites, low mites, gentle, all that kind of fun stuff. Again, like I said, barely a seed. All right. Make sure when you're working with your stuff, keep a damp paper towel, Do not pour water on the frame. I had somebody do that one time and say, well, they all die. It's like, oh, okay. Again, I told you where to put the bar in between. What color frame? Dark cat brood, the zingy tea. I always like to add more nurse bees. I figure the more the merrier. And again, give it 24 hours and then go in and look. And within 24 hours, that hive will go, oh, we gotta fix this. We have no queen. Somebody just told us make queens here. And within 24 hours, they're gonna have made a little pup. So your work is done. Close it up, come back in 10 days, and that's when you're gonna know how to divvy them up. So, when you have this spring, you're gonna go look for the ones that are like, that's too old, that's too old. You're gonna keep looking, see, now you got eggs, so you know you're gonna be between eggs and too old. So right in here, and then you're gonna take, like this looks like that looks like a nice one. You're gonna take your hive tool and come across these 5. Cut the bottom of it out and pull it down. Sure, you're gonna screw up these and you're gonna sacrifice them, but they're gonna come back and make 2 or 3 queen cells right there. You only want 2. All right, because biology wise, first queen out kills everybody, right? That's the best scenario. The worst scenario is their sister, and both get out, and then one of them will swarm. So then you just lost half of your work. So don't do that. Okay? If you do grafting, this is what you want. You want really long, they should be almost 2 inches, 1.5 inches. Also, notice on the queen cups up in here, they're white, they're full of royal jelly. That's why you're feeding 1-to-1 syrup and you're feeding the pollen pad. Because at night, those nurse bees they'll keep working if you give them resource. And again, though she was laying an egg, I told her, hurry up, and she didn't. But you want, they're saying that the size of the thorax, this part here, will help dictate how big a queen that's gonna be. So again, the better fed, bigger ones. We talked a little bit earlier, if you guys do this again as a group, when you're grafting and stuff, first initial of the person and have them graft 5 of them. And then when they come, after they've all been drawn out and capped over, you can put them in little holding cages. These are just California cages, drilled out 5/8 of an inch. Make a little holder. I think Tim Arhide sells them. You guys sell those, the cage holders? Get some, they're a lot of fun. And you line them up and you use different colors on your caps, so that kind of helps. differentiate who did what. This is the scooping. That if you use a hive tool, you can use a metal one that actually picks it up and stays hooked. Or you can use the Chinese one that bends as it goes down. Your other option is, remember I said about the scraping? Instead of coming down, you take your hive tool and just scrape right across the top of that. You're not gonna hurt the larva, because where's the larva? It's in that little depression. And so then you don't have to fight trying to get it out of the cell. That's where most new people struggle, is trying to navigate back up that little tiny thing and you bang it on the side, or the larva gets stuck or something like that. Scrape the wax off. Makes your life easier. Again, 80%, you'll catch them. You're good to go. Downside to scraping, the hive, when you return it to the hive, after you've done your grafting, they fill it with drone pump. So the drones aren't that smart. So. And again, like I said, we already talked about this. This is what it looks like 48 hours. And again, see how it's, you got royal jelly up in these? It should be absolutely packed so that when it comes time for them to cap them over, you have huge cells. We're not going to talk about the mating, but when the day before that she's due out. So if you graft, it's 3 days as an egg, right? A day or two as a larva before you scoop it or you cut and pull. So then the day that you cut and pull or graft, count 10 days from that. That's usually about day 14, 15. And then you're going to move them that day. Between the time that they cap that cell and day 10, do not touch those frames. Okay, let them go, because that queen is turning, moving, and it could damage an antennae, a wing, a leg, and then you just ruined your work. Okay, and that you guys can read. If possible, you can move them to another yard. I have some pictures coming up. I'm talking fast. We're on overtime, 4 minutes over. Does that mean you can fire me? Okay, so a lot of times people think you have to move things to another yard. You don't have to. This is my backyard. Mostly I took the picture because we had a lot of yellow jackets in the path, but that had nothing to do with it. So anyway, I just put them all over the place. I have that solid board that I brought up an example of it. So I run them right next to each other. The reason they're next to each other is they share a heat wall, which in the summer really doesn't matter, right? But this time of the year to about the end of June, I don't know about you guys, but for us, by the end of June, we could still have frost on our tomato plants. So we just try to, you know, if you could mitigate that up. So again, let them share it. Mine are dark brown. Every once in a while we throw in some white. Overwintering, that's huge. The queens you use for that are the ones after summer solstice. All right, that's what, June 21st. That's when the bees' winter starts, and they are really moving hard. Those queens are wired to build up fast and to overwinter hard. Okay, so if it's possible, do your grafting after that, sometime between the end of June, end of July. All of my work is done by the first week of August. I graft that last week of July so that they're ready to be put into nukes. Everything gets torn down. Nukes are put in. And what do you got in August? Don't you have like a boatload of drones available? Yeah, and these are mature. You don't have to buzz anybody. You know they're older. And it's always amazing too that those nukes that we make that first week of August, they're at least 5 over 5, and they'll be 35, 40 pounds. You can't pick them back up. I can't pick them up because they're awkward. And sometimes you get the guys that go, "Oh, I'll move them for you, Peggy." Oh, yeah, try it. And they go, "Okay, no, it's going to have to stay there." So again, it's a good way to have a backup plan for your spring. Sell it to the beekeepers that need more, or your new people and the club members. This is how I overwinter mine. There are 2 here. You can see the double migratory lids. but there's 5 over 5. I put that little piece of wood there because I don't want, in January is mating season for skunks. And the neighbors don't like when you're out shooting things in January, so we can't do that anymore. But again, I wrap them with tar paper. This is my, windbreak because that side is north and it's a field. So they have to have, they need a windbreak, that's only nice. And that's it. So they go in 5 over 5. For those to figure out when they're coming out, this is a really simple calendar that tells you when they laid the egg, when you should graft, when she comes back from mating, when she should be laying, it tells you everything. One of my favorite books is Dr. Larry Connors. He was kind of like a big mentor for me. That's my bee yard. That's my backyard, actually. So again, you can see, you know, she got moved right next door. Same thing here. This one got torn down into a whole bunch of them. That's the group around the pond. Okay, so thank you for listening. There's my information. Again, these are the little nukes, and these guys overwinter right on the edge of that top. So they have nothing underneath them. They don't get a windbreak. Sometimes they get a cardboard box. Out of the 65, we always put 65 in. We lost 2 last year. And the one, it was so windy that it blew it over. It was 4 high, blew it over and into the pond. So that really, okay. So question? There were a lot of questions. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so you're gonna separate the bees, you're gonna close them up for 2 days.
24 hours.
Or, yeah, or
Just
24 hours. And then what do you open? Now they know that they have to stay in there. So
Right.
I'm gonna keep on that piece of wood on the bottom.
I always keep the bottom closed up. The only time that I'll open the bottom up is like once they're in 2 boxes and that queen is laying and I feel comfortable with her. And then I'll open the bottom and I'll give them like a 1/2 inch. So they have a 1/2 inch at the bottom and I wedge that piece of wood in there tight so that any roaming critters can't pull it out. Yeah.
And you don't do that until like June, July.
Yeah, it's got, usually it's July and August, they can go more open on the bottom, like, yeah. But all you guys should be doing this is a whole lot easier. You can make increase, you can raise queens on purpose or not. It's a good way to have a backup. You could have at least 2 nuke boxes per, say, 5 hives going into winter. And if you don't need them, you sell them in the spring. Okay? So we have more fun up here with the people want to come. We have this box, which has, you don't have to feed on the outside. You put your food jar on the top. And it's got a little plastic turn. This is the old school. And so you guys can come look at it. I'll turn this off. Okay, my work is done. Thank you.
Peggy, thank you. Hey, any of you that want to stick around and talk to Peggy and look at boxes, whatever, you know how I am on punctuality. One thing I want to mention, if you're going to be coming to the workshop on mite treatments on May the 20th at the barn, it's going to start at 10 a.m. Once again, bring protective clothing is required if you're going to be around the bees. So, Peggy's got one more thing.
Right, this is the shameless plug for Ohio State Beekeepers. We have the Ohio State Fair coming up, so we have 12 days that we have to populate with volunteers. So what I like to extend to the clubs is that if your club wants to gather like 4 or 5 or 6 people and drive down as a group, that I will give all of you a free pass to get into the fair and give you a parking pass so you can park there for free. And that some of you man the booth while the others wander around the fair and then switch out at lunch. So that way you get like a 1/2 a day of free at the fair, and beekeepers get to, or public gets to learn from beekeepers what's going on with the honeybees.
What
And
day
when
is
is
it?
that?
That's going to be the end of July.
House State Fair starts, July 26th. And runs through. I think the last day is August 6th, so it's 12 days that we have to populate, so we're always looking for help. And then, of course, we have fall conference, that will be October 27th and 28th, we're always looking for help for that. And the state group, we're scattered all over the place, so. We all help you get it. That's it, I'm done.
All right, hey, I told you this would be a great time tonight. Hey, with that, does anybody have any questions or anything? I'm gonna go ahead and, oh, go ahead, Terry.
You're meeting on the 20th, what time?
Meeting on the 20th starts at 10 a.m. We should be done by about noon. You know, nothing fancy, but you know, we're gonna meet at the barn and do some stuff. With that, I'm gonna go ahead and adjourn the meeting. Those that want to stick around, stick around. And those of you that need to get to work in the morning, get out of here. Have fun.
Yeah, okay, I think first.
Yes.